Hi folks, James here, and welcome to the Spyro Circle, this time in partnership with Forbes Israel. Today I spoke with Noam Solomon, the co-founder and CEO of Immunai. So Immunai has raised almost $300 million with the mission to create the Google Maps of the immune system. Now, if you're confused about what that may mean, so was I when I first heard about the mission. And the mission is massive. They take a bunch of data and a bunch of information, and they're basically trying to understand the human body in a way that may not help us now, but will help people and companies and governments 10 or 20 years from now. Noam was talking about wanting to help other companies escape what's called the valley of death. It's the part of the company's journey where they can't quite get out of the problem that they're in. And so most companies die or have to shut down. Anyway, we spoke about his journey, about growing his company, working with large pharmaceutical companies, and also about the impact that AI is going to have on our lives. It was super interesting, and we could have spoken for 2 more hours, but we had to cut our time today, and I hope you enjoy what we had. Noam, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me here.
I want to start off with a few quick review bullet points about the company, and then we'll dive into it.
Sure.
You are the CEO of Immunai, Immunai, Immune AI. We'll get into it. You're bridging biology and computation, and your goal is to map the human immune system similar to the Google Maps of the immune system,
right?
Kind of thing. You've raised almost $300 million, $295 million, including a $215 million Series B. So quite big numbers for a big mission. And some of your influences include 0 to 1 and some of the work that's being done around the world. So thank you for taking the time.
For sure, and great to be here with you.
How did I do, by the way? Was that, yeah?
Yeah.
You had an impressive list, so it was hard to choose which ones to focus on. But I want to focus on Immunai itself for now. I want you to explain in simple terms, for those who may not be so familiar, what it is that you guys do and why you felt that you were the one to take on the challenge of what the company does.
Maybe the answer is naivete at the time, because it's quite a bit of a challenge, but there are 2 versions for what we do. I'll start with the business problem first. Drug development is failing. It's failing on the business side. It's also failing us, the patients. What is remarkable to me, coming from a tech background, being a mathematician, computer scientist, is that high tech as a whole has been made possible due to what is known as Moore's law of engineering. So since the 60s, the compute power has been multiplying every 2 years or 3 years, and that means that the same algorithm that existed in '95 will run 3 decades later. It actually doesn't keep growing in the same scale, but it's going to be 2 to the 15 times quicker, and that means that you can do so much more with the same algorithm. So it's not just improvement in ideas; it's the improvement of the machine that get better, and this is called Moore's law of engineering. In biotechnology, despite so much progress in technology and in science, we have the literal opposite law called Abrams' law of biotechnology, where investments in drug development is diminishing. So what you see is that instead of improving the ROI to investors in pharma companies and biotechnology, the returns are diminishing. And that means that it takes longer time to develop a new drug. So today, more than 10 years. It takes more money, more than $2 billion to bring a drug to the market. And unfortunately, about 5-6% of clinical trials actually make it to an FDA approval. So only 1 in 19 make it. And these statistics are very poor, and they're becoming more poor as time goes by. And so we are set to solve this problem. But then, what is our secret sauce? We believe and understand that the difference between why certain patients will respond to a drug and why others won't respond to the drug is because of our immune system. And so we said it like 7.5 years ago, if we map the human immune system, we'll be able to predict what will happen to patients even before they are being treated with a drug. So that's kind of a big, moonshot. Can we map the immune system? And I thought that this was, at the time, in late 2018, a very good time where 3 different things happened together, and I can explain more about this.
Please, yeah.
So I felt that there was a perfect storm where compute power was growing tremendously. New AI algorithms were kind of being developed. This was before ChatGPT, but it was only a few years before then. And single cell technology is allowing us to map tissues at the single cell level, really creating resolution that was not available, before 2015, you couldn't do it. So now you can map tissues, you can map blood cells at the single cell level, and you get much more precise results. And with the, this intersection of better compute power, better AI, and better biological technologies, we thought now is a good time to actually to map the immune system. And this was kind of the starting moment for us. And, why did I think I can solve this problem? It's a different question. I can try to, but probably either hubris or naivete.
That's funny because I never hear that like admission where it's like, oops. But there's always something in the founder where they set out to want to do something and change the world, and something like drug discovery or something like biotech. It's like a big journey, and it's slow as well, and it's not the typical move fast and break things pace that a lot of startups or entrepreneurs chase and go through. So I want to understand a bit about mapping the immune system and what that really means now, 7 years later, 8 years later, that you've been on this journey. How is it changing the game for drug development? So what is it that you folks are doing now that's changing it for, I guess, now or the future?
Okay, so I think for this, I will try to explain first, like, what does it mean to map the immune system, and then why I thought it was interesting, not just as a moonshot. Can we map the immune system? It's such a complicated problem to solve, but why did I think that there was maybe something that I can offer from a different perspective? And so importantly, the immune system is not like an organ. You're not trying to map cells from an organ. The immune system is a very distributed system. And you can also argue that there is some intelligence to the immune system because it operates as a distributed system. But for example, when a T cell identifies an antigen on a tumor cell or on some cell that is outside the body, it can clonally expand. So that means, imagine that you have a war and your best soldier is able to do something remarkable. You can just expand this soldier like 1,000,000 times. So you have one soldier times, thousands or millions. That's something that only the immune system can do. But how do you map this, immune system? When you have immune cells, you have them in your blood. You have them in some of the organs. They are being, created, for example, the T cells in the thymus. You have a lot of activation in the lymph nodes, and you have the spline. And so people told me it's a great idea, but it's an infinitely complex system. Trillions of immune cells. And at the time, in late 2018, being a mathematicians are not afraid of counting infinities. So I said, okay, how infinite is this problem? So there are trillions of immune cells, and there are multiple organs, and there are complicated interactions. But at the end of the day, it's a finite problem. It's an incredibly complex problem, but not infinitely complex. So what do you need in order to solve a very complicated problem? You need to have a lot of data. So how do we generate the data? And this goes back to the single cell sequencing technologies that allow you to really map different cells separately. But the problem with this technology, single cell RNA sequencing, that it's extremely sensitive to environmental noise. And that means that if a nurse in Sheba or Ichilov will take the blood measurements or blood draw from a patient, and a different nurse will do the same in Mount Sinai or in UPenn, they may use different syringes or different chemical reagents, and they may take a little bit longer or shorter to actually do the process, the results can be very different. So RNA degrade very quickly. And what you end up having is not just the RNA data, messenger RNA data from the immune systems of the patient, but you also have a lot of noise. And these are called batch effects. And batch effects are introduced by environmental noise or technical noise that is not part of the biology. And this is exactly the type of problems mathematicians would want to solve. And this is why I was excited about this problem. I said it's not just that the new technologies or the perfect storm. It's that in order to actually solve this problem, you need to have a mathematical mindset to say we're going to generate a shitload of data and we're going to apply very sophisticated algorithms to reduce the noise, harmonize the data better, and then come up with immune profiling of patients. And so this was kind of, what got us excited in the early days. It was a team that came from immunology background, pathology background, but also computational science background, mathematicians, physicists, etc. And together we said, let's map the immune system together. And 7 years later, we've been working with 60 partners over the years. Today we work with 7 of the top 25 pharma companies.
Can we name them, or are there some restrictions?
We can name some of them. For example, AstraZeneca, Teva, BMS. There are others.
You're working with like the big main players.
Yeah, we are, and I often joke that working with pharma companies is very similar to dancing with gorillas. We can also talk about this. Definitely working with the big players is like taking a very heavy weight on your shoulders. You need to not only work very diligently, but you need to deliver results always. You can't miss a step. So this is something we've been doing from the very early days. And over time, as the immune profiling and the AI get better, the outcome and the results that we provide to our partners get better, and we also paid more. So this is kind of, it's not a binary thing. It's not, one and done. You map the immune system, you're done. You actually keep mapping the immune system. You keep unlocking more secrets. And every time you get better, the outcome and the results and the ability to support the decision-making in the clinical development are getting better.
So I want to touch on a few things you said, because we could branch off in a few different directions.
Sure.
The space you're in, but the biotech space, the landscape generally, you mentioned at the start, it's a big failure rate, and it's also very expensive. I mean, we can see with the money that you guys have behind you, but also just the industry money. How do you folks, what's it looking like today now that funding may have, like the landscape funding has changed, organizations are changing the way that they're approaching this kind of research. So you mentioned dancing with gorillas, which I think is a term I've never heard. It's super interesting. So I want to understand how that dance has been changed and who those gorillas are and why. Let's double click on the metaphor.
Okay, so maybe I'll start with this metaphor. You know how you dance with a gorilla?
Well, it depends on the dance, but I think anything but slow dance would be my choice.
Yeah, but you would dance, whether it's a slow or fast dance, you're going to dance exactly how the gorilla wants. You don't have any other choice. And that's why this is an important, metaphor to remember, because you have very little flexibility in the way that you operate with those big players. They have, a certain agenda or certain drug that are going to try and push to the clinic. And your job is to provide the best guidance that you can and answer the question that they have. And usually to tell them what they want to hear. And again, another thing that is, a challenge, because not always the AI is going to tell them what they want to hear. So the messaging and how to work with such big players is really, it's a discipline that you need to kind of study and commit to. It's much more than just the platform and the AI. But you mentioned also other points, which is the fact that the financial markets have changed over the last 7 years, right? I mean, we started, it was, like spring or summer, and now it feels like, winter was coming and now it came. And I think it's definitely true, geopolitically all over the world. We see the Russia-Ukraine war, we see, US-China thing, we see also in the, our little corner of the world, also a lot of complexities. But definitely the decisions that have been made for cutting funding in research, the NIH, DARPA, etc., they have important implications not for the next 3 years, but for the next 20 years.
So what does that mean? What does that do to innovation? Those cuts that you just mentioned, and in the biotech space specifically, what does that mean?
Yeah, so it's a deep question, and I think that there are two things that are happening simultaneously. And importantly, those complexities started before those decisions have been made. But innovation, there is invention or discovery, invention, innovation, and then actually monetization or engineering and then monetization. I think if you cut funding, you cut on the ability to do discoveries and inventions, even before innovation. So what is happening is that universities, researchers, hospitals have less funding to do research, and so less discoveries are going to be made. So that means that in a decade from now, 2 decades from now, we're going to see less discoveries that are being kind of propelled and made available to us, not only in medicine, in other areas as well. And this is something, again, that even if you don't see immediately, it has consequences. A lot of very smart, brilliant researchers are quitting universities. And importantly, they're not even hired now after the postdoc research, right? I mean, universities are cutting on their budgets, they're cutting on headcount, they're not going to hire the best talent, and so they're going to go elsewhere. Sometimes they're going to do research in the industry, sometimes they're going to go to Wall Street instead of developing a new medicine. But the other element, which is, I think, very profound, 10 years ago, definitely 20 years ago, in order to bring funding to a clinical trial for a drug, let's say in cancer, you just had to show that there is an interesting mechanism of action of the drug and that the drug is safe. Showing safety in a drug is something that takes some money and time, but it's not like showing efficacy. Showing efficacy takes much more time and much more money. And so what is now needed in 2025, 2026 is to show clinical proof of concept. So the drug is actually efficacious before the big players are going to fund it and before investors are going to fund it. And that means that the process between the discovery, innovation, bringing it to the clinical proof of concept, it is the process that is called, or the area that is called the valley of death in biotechnology is being expanded. So the valley of death takes longer and it's bigger and more companies die. Many more companies die in biotechnology. It sounds a little bit sad. We're starting the interview with such a difficult message, but I think that the biotech landscape today, it feels like a graveyard. So many companies are dying.
But it's interesting that's an interesting analogy. The biotech space feels like a graveyard. It's interesting to address that, though, because that's why we're talking today, to see how companies like Immunai have navigated those challenges and thrived at doing it and survived, escaped the valley of death. And I want to stay in the valley because you're right. Some of the things you mentioned are the notes that I took ahead of time, which is that academia are the ones that are producing the insights, but if those people are leaving, the new things aren't being discovered. If funding's cut, then innovation is stalling. So, and then of course it becomes more conservative and capital becomes less efficient. So what do you suggest are some of the proposals to change that or reverse it?
So first I'll just say that Immunai, it's operating in the biotechnology space, but it's not a proper biotech in the sense that we are not developing drugs and bringing them to market. We are a tool or a technology that can support biotechnology companies and biopharma companies to bring their drugs to the market faster and better and more cheaply. So in this sense, we are not taking the same risk that biotechnology companies are taking. And maybe in some sense, we are helping de-risk their valley of death. In some sense. So I think it's important to know that CEOs of biotechnology companies, they're taking a very meaningful binary bet and they are going to walk the valley of death, and hopefully they're going to come, the other side stronger. But there are so many barriers to cross. The funding was always an issue. Now it's a much bigger issue. I think the regulator, the FDA, has to be a little bit more loosened and allow for more technologies to kind of make the process or the valley of death a little bit more easier to cross, instead of like bringing more and more conditions for what you need to show in order to get the phase 1, phase 2 going. I think we want to see more, not only governmental money, but also more, hopefully investors and more philanthropy money, going into such big mission statements and big endeavors. And hopefully new technologies like Immunai's technology can de-risk the process. And I think our contribution is that we believe tremendously that what will change the landscape is higher quality data, feeding better AI solutions that are going to de-risk the process and make it more like worthwhile for investors to invest in.
We've been focused a bit more on the US drip down effect. What about other places in the world? Like, what about Europe? What's their reaction been? And how are they navigating some of this? A famously more conservative and cautious bloc.
Yeah. Maybe I'll answer and you can deduce from my answer. I think the more interesting angle today is what happens in China and the Far East. China is definitely becoming a very strong player in the biotechnology space. I'm not sure that Europe is like, it's definitely second to the US but very far second. And I think you're right that investments in biotechnology, as the bet is becoming more complicated, it's expelling the European investors, I feel, from the game a bit more, and I don't see so many biotech companies that are thriving in the European space.
Yeah, there aren't many companies in Europe thriving in any space. At least some of these like large companies that have achieved massive global scale and change. I don't feel like Europe's really producing any of those, except with the exception of Spotify. I saw a graph once. It was like all of the big companies, these $1 trillion companies, and where they're coming from. It's kind of all US.
Yeah.
And then Spotify. And I guess now China, you're saying.
No, but if we go to the biotech space, I think biotech compared to high tech, the investment that is needed to secure a successful journey for a biotech is much higher in biotech than compared to other more traditional tech investments, and the return can be it's a very binary bet. It can be very significant, but I think on the expected revenue or return side, it's more lucrative to invest in tech. And so everything that you're saying about tech in US compared to Europe, I think it's even more so in biotech. I've been in some forums where I heard the complaints of CEOs in biotechnology companies in Europe that they are complaining about the lack of investors coming to Europe and investing in companies. And I think the science in Europe is very good. So, and universities in Europe, they are doing well, and I think the cutting in funding in Europe has not been as significant, I think, as in the US. But still, the atmosphere of taking risk, etc., or like investing in innovation is not incredible. And I think in China, they have a very strong setup that is also about the operational costs that are needed to actually survive the value of that. They are making everything much easier. The regulation is much easier. The ability to kind of bring technology and IP from all over the world into China and do everything more cheaply, more quickly, et cetera, is making the Chinese, they are closing the gap very quickly.
But is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because there are many people that will be listening or watching this that will be China skeptic. I'm certainly a China skeptic, in plenty of spaces. So whenever I hear China creeping up or closing a gap, I get a bit concerned. is that warranted, or is that me being overly cautious?
First of all, I'm not an expert in this type of politics, but I do think that competition is doing good. I think the Russia-US competition, for example, the going to space, I think it did good. China becoming much more ambitious and willing to invest many more resources and capabilities to take the lead should propel the rest of the world, and US leading the rest of the Western world to accelerate their investment. And I don't see it happening yet, but I hope it will happen. And I think this is a very important competition. But at the end of the day, if China is going to develop new drugs, right now it is much stronger in bringing technologies to China very quickly and implementing them. But if China is going to generate new technologies and new science and new drugs, they are going to propagate to the rest of the world in one way or another. So I don't think it's bad. I also am optimistic about the future. Generally, I think entrepreneurs are optimistic about the future, and I hope that China will be more open in the way that it conducts, commerce, etc. So overall, I don't think of this as a bad thing. But I'm trying to take the political angle of this outside.
Well, it sounds like from what you were saying as well that kind of the US has the spirit of innovation, and that Europe then has the infrastructure to facilitate that innovation, but there's a disconnect on each side from causing each one to join. So if you could not you, but if one could mesh the innovation with the, as you said, the academic infrastructure in place of the other, it could be unstoppable.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example, and I think I'm venturing into saying things that are a little bit less, maybe PC, but I think that...
I have that effect on people.
So people are asking me, Noam, what do you think about work-life balance? And I don't believe in work-life balance. So for me, work-life balance is work. I have, 2 small kids and a wife that I, love dearly, but I work all the time. And I think innovators, entrepreneurs, CEOs of small startups have to create the DNA of companies that are going to get shit done. And there are places in the world where, you adopt this spirit in order to succeed. And I think in other places, work-life balance is more important, a lot of vacation days, a lot of, following the rules to a very strict manner. In order to take the lead, if you are competing and, your competitor is working harder than you, investing more than you, are going to lose. And I think we, people in the Western world, need to stop thinking that we are better, that we are smarter, that we are not. We have some, edge in the sense that we've built the institutions, the universities, the companies. We have a lot of talent that can, propel us for success, but we need to invest in the future. And I think that this has been, really going in the other way for, a long time. I think now with the AI revolution, maybe some things are going to happen in ways that are unpredictable at this moment. But I definitely, my hope is that we are going to see investments in moonshots, in things that are much more ambitious and not necessarily are clear how to implement. And crazy entrepreneurs and crazy investors are going to invest in these initiatives to actually bring them to humanity, into, civilization, quicker and better, even despite the risks. And I feel that this is ideally the work of government, of the EU, the European Union, but we don't see enough forces pushing us to invest in the progress in what's to come next. Again, there many entrepreneurs are trying to bring those things forward. But when you meet investors, so you can ask me, how did we raise so much money? Do you want to ask me this question?
How did you raise so much money?
And so my answer is that we raised a fraction of what we need to raise. And here is why. Sequencing one sequence from one patient, one time point, when we started, cost maybe $4,000 or $5,000, and we want to get to $1 million. So multiply $4,000 or $5,000 by $1 million, you get $4 or $5 billion. Not including interest, etc. We raised a very small part of this, so definitely not even 10% of this. So how do we hope to get there? Why did we even think that we were going to build such a big map of the immune system?
The hubris and naivety, right?
Yeah, I think it actually, this point was not naivety. It was the naivety is actually thinking I will get to see the other side. I mean, it can take 20 years. But the point of, raising the most amount of money that I could actually forced me to work with pharma companies. Because if I could raise $5 billion for this endeavor, I would just go and do the sequencing without partnerships. Because I didn't have enough money, I said, okay, now I have to work with pharma companies. They need to pay me because I need to spend, over the years, like $4 or $5 billion. And the other element is that even if the initial cost of $4,000 or $5,000 a sample, they could, diminish over time, or we can reduce costs. Because technology gets better, the costs go down. And they are going down significantly. So when you do the math, we still need to make an investment that is going to cost us close to $1 billion. And this is what, when I told investors, said if we raise this amount of money, we're going to be able to unlock a technology bar or ceiling that is going to allow us to do things that are otherwise impossible. For example, to develop drugs in a much better, faster, and higher probability way to succeed. And there were, enough visionary or stupid investors that said, none of them are stupid, but
sorry, continue your point.
That said, okay, we think that if you succeed, the upside is so significant, not only to humanity, but from economical perspective, that we are going to take the risk that you are going to get to the other side, and you are going to bring value in this valley of death that is going to make many more companies thrive and succeed.
I want to stay on your investors, because I realized I didn't name any of them at the start. So I mentioned the funding numbers, and just in case anyone's forgotten since we started, it's 295 million. 215 million of that was from one round in the Series B that you had. And I've got here that some of your investors include Koch Disruptive Technologies, Alexandria Venture Investments, HVC, Piedmont, and Icon. I'm sure maybe there are others.
Yeah, maybe I want to explicitly call out TLV Partners and Viola Ventures that were the first investors in the company, and they took the bigger risk on us before we had anything, not in the Series B, but in the seed round. And they've remained very trusted partners and friends through the process. And I think all the other names that you mentioned kind of entered the partnership and kept fueling us, but in a more mature company, and I thank all of them. But I think the early investors are always the ones that you keep very close to you, because they're going to be with you in the better times and the darker times.
So that's what I was going to say, exactly. So talk me through the relationship you have with these investors who are going all in on you guys and want to see some of those results that you outlined, as you said, could take 20 years. So tell me about those early days and those connections.
Yeah, it's a great question. I admit I haven't been asked this question in I don't remember when, but
I always like to hear that when I speak to you.
It's a good question. I wonder how much time we have to answer it. But I do think that what I try to always do from the beginning is to be very upfront, transparent, honest about the challenges, like what we actually have, what the challenges are, and what we are aiming to get. So I'll give you an example without naming a specific name. In this B round that you mentioned, prior to doing the round, I met with a few investors, and one of them asked me to say, I'm talking about 2021, where are you going to be in 3 years from now? And I said, I'm not going to answer this question. And the reason is that I don't want to be measured on the short term. Ask me where I'm going to be in 15 years. I want to be able to unlock the secrets of the immune system. I understand, and these are the values that we're going to get if we do that. If we do that, the company is going to be huge, both commercially, financially, but also in the impact that it made on the world. If I tell you where we're going to be in 3 years, you're going to measure me on the nickel and dime on milestones that are, first of all, scientific and technologically. We don't know if we're going to get there in 2024, 2026. It doesn't really matter. What we need to be able to show is that we are going a distance now for a decade or 15 years. You have the trust in us that this is worthwhile, and we are going to create the milestones. Maybe they take indeed 3 years or 4 years, but we make the milestones and we show progress along the way.
Well, that's the difference with biotech, though, isn't it? Because other companies are like, we'll have X amount of customers or we'll have these markets. But biotech's a bit different because, as you said, you don't know when those milestones are.
That's the other thing that you mentioned. Like, we have different types of investors. We have tech investors that, like you mentioned, there is a playbook for high-tech companies or startup companies that you need to start showing like exponential growth in revenues, in customers, etc. And there is the biotech investors that typically invest in drugs. So they typically don't invest in technologies. And we are, neither here nor there, right? We don't want to be measured by the amount of partners or the amount of money that we make, because I think this is a proxy that even if we make tens of millions of dollars the way that we do today, this is not the primary thing I want to be measured on. I want to be measured on the ability to make progress towards unlocking the secrets of the immune system. And maybe I'll give you an example. What is the difference between a usual startup company, for example, Facebook, and not usual, but Facebook is an example for a company that made so much success, but you could see in the very early days, the technology was, an app that you could, people on, Harvard campus, or you can chat with people. There wasn't like any technological breakthrough in order to actually make it happen. The technology was measured on how fast are people, using it, how much, what is the...
It was the network, right? That was
exactly. How fast is the network growing? How, is it like here to mouth? If you use it, you have 10 friends are going to start using it, etc. And let's take another, opposite example, maybe like SpaceX. You want to go to Mars. You want to build, some, spaceship to go to Mars. But to make it more concrete, I want to, or make it more, maybe not concrete, but to take it to a metaphor that I want to use is you are now developing two technologies. One is a technology to get you out of a very deep hole that you are stuck at. So you are now, like, let's say, I don't know, a kilometer below ground. You need to get out of a dark hole that you need to, okay. The other is that you are digging a hole in the ground. So these are like two missions that you have. The value in the first company can only be unlocked if you actually get out of the hole. So even if you were able, let's say you are a kilometer down, if you got 900 meters up and you got stuck and you fell down, you get zero value. In the other example, where you dig something, you dig a hole, already after the first 100 meters, you already have some value, right? Because how fast did you do it? How much meters did you go? And you can compare your technology to other hole digging technologies. So in the first example of like getting out of a hole, this is a moonshot, or something that if you are able to have a technology that will get you out of the hole, you unlocked something tremendous. If you only got 99% out of it and you didn't get to the other side, it's zero. And in the other example, you can bring value, can build value incrementally. So I think what we started with doing, getting out of the hole of, mapping the immune system, it seems like a very binary bet, right? You need to really break the code of the immune system. What we were trying to do from the beginning is how can we map this problem and start creating milestones that we know that we're making progress towards it. So it's not 0 or 1. Towards the journey to get to 1, we actually make 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. For example, can we map some part of the immune system that is going to allow us to bring value to choosing indications to drugs? Indication means what diseases are you going to treat the drug for? Or what are the best combinations to give the drug with? So we started figuring out ways to start creating value before we get to the full solution. It will take us another 10 years. And the investors that we have understood that real value is going to be created in 2031, 2, 3. And they agreed to follow us and invest in us. And so they became friends and partners in a very long journey, trying to kind of get out of this, metaphoric hole and not measure us on every, single incremental progress. And some years are tremendous and some years are a little bit slower, but they understand it. And I think this is maybe the success that we have in choosing the right partners.
I loved so much of what you just said. It was so great. I loved the metaphors that you were building. But the investors that you've just said are with you in that journey, is that a typical journey for them to be in?
No.
Right, yeah.
No.
So talk to me about why they chose to be on that journey with you guys and not someone else, or why they typically don't embark on that journey.
I mean, I think you should probably invite them and ask them.
Well, yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
I'm
just trying to get an understanding of what they saw in you. And you're right, it's probably a question for them as a question for you, but because it's not a typical.
Yeah.
It's not a typical trait that the investors would do. So I'm trying to understand how that would come about.
So, the answer is that you definitely need to ask them, but I can try to read back to you what I heard over the years from certain investors that invested in us and that are still interested to keep investing in us. And it's something about, stacking the arguments, the hypotheses, the assumptions in a way that seems reasonable, even if difficult to achieve. But what you unlock if you actually achieve it is going to be game-changing. I'll give you an example that I'm not sure if you can guess. I'm not going to test you, but we know that the best tech companies in the world that completely changed our life, from Apple to Microsoft to Google, they are worth more than $1 trillion. There is a company, Eli Lilly. I'm giving an advertisement here. They have, a drug for obesity. Do you know what's the current valuation today?
It's either going to be trillions or zero.
You're right. I mean, they are the first pharma company that made it to $1 trillion valuation. I don't think people understand that those pharma companies are in size, there are tens of thousands of people. In valuation, there are hundreds of billions of dollars. So these are like huge companies that are making so much change, and we are only hearing about Tesla and Apple. So what does it mean? What does it tell you that you have such big companies that are making a change, and not only are they making a change, you probably would care more about a life saving drug than you will care about driving Tesla. Not to insult Elon Musk here. But
or getting to the moon or Mars or something, yeah.
Right, and people are almost they are uninformed about the fact that there are companies here that are, spending billions of dollars every year. So the total, every one of these like top 20 pharma companies are investing tens or at least billions of dollars a year in R&D for drug development. And if they succeed, you have a drug, for example, for obesity. Right, so this has an impact. I think millions of people are now being treated for like those, GLP-1 medications for obesity or type 2 diabetes. And I think that going back to the investors' question, they understand that if we are able to really build, a Google Maps for the immune system, these Google Maps can be used to drive or to navigate successfully to FDA approvals, and every one of these FDA approvals can be worth, from billions to tens of billions in one drug, which is, remarkable. So I think that we kind of adopted them and helped them kind of join our journey, because we are not a typical biotech bet, we're not a typical tech bet, we are something new. But I think this something new can benefit from, advances in biotechnology and in tech, and can also benefit biotechnology and tech companies. We haven't talked about the AI. I think this is another area that could be very interesting to speak about. Our thesis for AI and how it is different from ChatGPT or, bets like this.
Yeah. Well, that's my next point is you spoke about the mesh that you guys are, and that you're kind of bringing these different things together. And of course, there's the AI aspect that's changing everything. So what is your role in shaping this next generation of AI when it comes to the biotech space and some of the solutions that are going to be cracked? Where does Immunai fall into all of that in the next, let's say, 20 years, 50 years?
Again, a very nuanced and deep question, because I think if you had asked me 10 years ago, and I always think about the future, but where are we going to be in 10 years? I wouldn't be able to imagine that, the Turing test, I'm not sure if the viewers and listeners are familiar with, it's a test that Alan Turing, the kind of godfather, or the person that modern computer science, computer science is attributed to him, coined in, I think, 100 years ago, that you put two objects in a room, could be living organisms, and you ask questions, and you can't know if this is like a human or a machine. 10 years ago, I think we were all very confident that we are not close to breaking the Turing test. Now, I think if you are going to have ChatGPT or one of the other chat bots converse with you, like, I'm not talking about a deep conversation. We can start asking about feelings, but like a casual conversation, it will be difficult for you to know, maybe you can screen the humans for being more stupid, right? If you're going to get very good answers.
See the typos.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's why we are living in a world where in the next 10 years, the change in our society that is going to be, created or inflicted by AI, I can't, fully envision. And there is one scenario that is going to happen very quickly and, also badly, even though I'm not subscribing into this future. There is another future where it's going to augment us so tremendously. It's very difficult to project or to predict where we're going to be in 10 years. But there is, I think, an overlooked area that people just completely misunderstand about AI, and where AI has shown value and where AI hasn't shown value. So in computer vision and in text, these are two areas where AI has tremendously reshaped our lives. The ability to drive autonomous cars is something that modern AI has completely changed, and I guess that we are going to be driving autonomous cars or riding autonomous cars in the next 10 years.
Yeah, there'll be. I always see autonomous cars as not cars that drive themselves, but kind of offices that take you from place to place. So,
yeah,
my commute here today was great because I listened to a podcast while I was driving, but I couldn't answer emails. Or I couldn't do anything. So I see autonomous vehicles as
Yeah, definitely.
Hotel rooms.
It's going to be you're right. But I'm saying, just even if you don't think about the implication, just think about what we said 10 years ago, that we're not going to trust vehicles so much that are going to, are you going to let a car drive you without a driver? But the driver is making a lot of mistakes when they drive. And it's very likely that within a few years, autonomous vehicles are going to be, foolproofs. And similarly, ChatGPT today can take a medical exam and be better than medical students. And this is not the end of what conversational intelligence is being empowered with AI. But we are not seeing the same thing in more complicated areas. And in particular, RNA or proteomics data, you can try to read it with like text, but it's not going to be remarkable. And I think what we are failing to understand, I think, globally, is that why is ChatGPT or OpenAI successful? Because it had access to huge amounts of text data, from Shakespeare to New York Times, but in quantities and volume that was sufficient to understand human language or English. Biology is so much more complicated. You have so many more combinations that are possible, and it's not man-made. So everything is encrypted by, the RNA molecules or the DNA molecules. You need much more data, and you need to be able to have technologies to measure this data accurately, robustly. And it's A, very expensive, and B, not very easy to get this data. And so I think what will happen in the next 20 years is that we're going to see AI going into places and making a difference when high quality data and proprietary high quality data can be generated at scale, and then AI can be applied on. If you don't do this, I don't think, if you have a company that is doing AI, but you don't have your own data, then it's going to be, probably consumer products, but not like, new AI. For Immunai, our database called Amica, the name stands for Annotated Multi-Omic Immune Cell Atlas. Today it contains, let's say, 50,000 samples. We're going to get to 1 million in the next 5 years. But this is ours. It's our technology doing the profiling. It's our database, our harmonization. And the AI is going to be applied to it, is going to be stronger, not only because the algorithm is better, but because the data is proprietary and growing exponentially fast. These are going to be the types of things that are going to allow for new intelligence types to emerge. And I believe that when you combine different types of intelligence together, biological intelligence, conversational intelligence, vision or sight intelligence, you will have smarter machines that are going to, be able to take things to the next level. And I don't know exactly how this future looks like in 20 years. But in 20 years, we are going to live in a future where machines are going to outsmart us probably in every dimension, except for will and initiatives taking.
Hopefully.
I mean, this is not where I'm unless we're going to try to make machines independent, which I don't think we should.
Yeah. Or it's whether they make themselves.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, I think that some of the people that are concerned about the future of AI, they're concerned that at some point machines will feel that we, the human race is a threat, and they're going to start. But
or
this
not
is
even a threat, just redundant.
Or redundant, but
The opposite.
I don't think it's going to happen in the next 2 decades. This is where I'm maybe on the more positive side. It's more likely that we are going to use machines like AI. Let's say you have a surgery, like a simple surgery that are going to kind of wire you to or integrate you into your brain. Your brain is going to be AI powered, and then let's say evil things are going to happen because of AI augmented humans, want to be like Dr. Evils and take over the world. It's much more likely this is going to be a bad scenario for the humanity rather than machines, developing wills that are going to overthrow us from our place. But humans taking this to a bad place for sure. Or governments taking this to a bad place.
That is a whole other episode for us to explore, because I have so much to say about that and so much to think about it and so much to ask. And I would kind of want to, we are approaching sadly the end of our time, so I do want to end with some questions that I have here. But the idea of AI augmenting humans and it's scaring humans. It's funny because we've been augmenting ourselves for hundreds of years in some form. I mean, I augment my vision, right?
Yeah.
And people augment their hearing, and people have hip replacements or prosthetic limbs. So people have been augmenting themselves for hundreds of years. It's just about the ability, with the tech, and that ability to augment the humans, I think is quite frightening. But I'm a bit of an AI doomer at some point. It depends on what side of the bed I wake up in the morning. If I'm in a good mood, I'll be optimistic about AI. And if I'm in a bad mood, I'll be like quite concerned about it. But I think that's normal. And I think that's hopefully the right people are in the right place to make sure that the future is a positive one, like the one you outlined.
If you're asking me, living in Israel and what we are seeing in the last few years, I think I'm more concerned about the fact that people that have malintent are going to use technology for, evil uses. And I think that for this, you don't need to be very imaginative. It's clearly going to happen. And the question is, are we going to keep, the nations are going to keep fighting with one another, going to understand that in order for us to kind of prepare the world for a future where humans are being augmented with AI for good, we need to kind of collaborate together. I don't see that this is happening. And this is why I am scared, because there is no future where AI will not augment or will not add so much more to our thinking. So people are going to be, so much smarter than we can imagine today in 10 or 20 years. So that means that some people, especially the rich people, are going to have access to being like so much smarter. Some of the smartest people are not necessarily, benevolent. So you can imagine that things will happen. And I think we need to prepare for this by actually, creating certain treaties, etc., that are going to force people developing technologies to not abuse them, etc. So in this sense, I think you are right to be concerned about the future. But I don't think it's about like a machine writing itself to kind of take over and becoming.
No, it's. I remember. We're going to end on a quote from someone else, which is funny after almost an hour of us two talking. But I think it was Ricky Gervais was once asked in an interview if he was scared of being run by superintelligence, and he was like, I think his response was something to the effect of, "I just want some form of intelligence.
Yeah.
I just want our leaders to have some form of something." No, on that note, we have to call it quits. We're running out of time, although I do want to end quickly, how I often do, with a quickfire round. So I want to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer them very quickly. First thing that enters your mind. So,
can I say something before related to Ricky? I heard someone, I don't remember whom, said, maybe it was Einstein, said, I'm not sure about artificial intelligence, but I'm much more concerned about like natural stupidity or something like this.
Right.
So there is something about AGI, or the artificial intelligence, is a very interesting concept, and it will, maybe 20 years, maybe 30 years will take, will arrive. But I think there are other things we need to be more concerned about right now in the next 10 years. And I'm with you in the sense that we need to think about this proactively and not just wait.
Yeah, definitely. So you've changed the order of my lightning round question because
Okay.
I want to follow that thought.
Okay.
What is the one book or podcast or thinker at the moment who's been on your mind that's shaped some of your ideas?
So, I mean, you just quoted the most recent book that I've read, which is Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. And I think it's very provocative. By the way, it's from more than 10 years ago. It's very interesting to read it today with what we know, because a lot of things that is referring to kind of AI and what AI can do. And I think many of these things are a little bit outdated with what we know. But I think his approach to innovation, his approach to starting companies and what we need to be concerned about is very, very interesting. Definitely every founder, every entrepreneur need to hear this book or read the book.
What's one mindset shift that helped you as a CEO?
So for me, I was a mathematician, a scientist, and I think there is a tendency to want to see all the shades or all the colors that are out there. And I think as a CEO, you need to understand that you're a decision-making machine. So you need to strive to simplify, to see less shades, kind of aggregate things and make decisions more quickly. And I think this is, definitely a transformation. If you want to have more, I have another one.
What's a trait you look for in your team?
Being very hungry and understanding that you're on an urgent mission.
What's the first thing you do in the morning?
These days, I take my daughter or son, whoever is crying.
Yeah, I know that feeling. We have the same answer. What's a trend in biotech that people are overhyping?
AI.
What are they underestimating?
I think, by the way, AI is in both directions, because some people underestimate how much it can do. And I think many investors and many founders are just abusing the AI. So I definitely think it's underestimated and overhyped.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with you. Last question. What is the best way for someone to follow you or connect with you or chase updates for what the company's up to?
So we have a website, immunai.com. You can, reach me on LinkedIn, and you can email me, noam@immunai.com.
Noam, thank you so much for your time today.
Likewise. Thank you very much, James.